Hey, welcome back to Bob's Two-Car Garage. Now, a lot of people ask me, if I'm going to get into woodworking, what should I buy first? Well, as a matter of fact, a few months back, I got everything stolen. So I had a great opportunity to decide what I needed to buy first. You don't want to go out and do it twice, so you want to make a good choice the first time. Stick around. I'm going to show you what I think you should buy first. Hi, my name is Bob, and I love my two-car garage. Now, the first thing you need is something to cut a straight line with, and this is probably the most difficult choice of all because there's so many different options here. I got 3 different skill saws here that basically do the same thing, but some of them do some things a little better than others, so kind of a difficult choice, but let me tell you what I think. The first thing I bought was just a regular corded skill saw, and I bought the Skill brand. There's a lot of good brands that you can choose from when it comes to a skill saw. Don't buy the cheapest one. Don't go get it from Harbor Freight. Harbor Freight is fine if you're just going to use something once or twice or maybe 3 times, but I wouldn't depend on it for a long time, so I went with this regular skill saw. This skill saw is obviously bigger than some of the others, but if you need it to do everything, if you're doing a lot of heavy work like cutting 2x4s and stuff like that, the regular worm drive skill saw is a good choice. It'll pretty much do it all for you. However, it is a little harder to handle. Now down the line is the corded saw right here, but not the worm drive. It's the direct drive skill saw. A little easier to handle, more for making cabinets and stuff like that. So if you know you're gonna be making cabinets, you're not gonna do a lot of heavy work like cutting 2x4s and such, this is a good choice. Because it's corded, doesn't matter what brand you buy. But again, don't get the cheapest brand because it's just not gonna last. This is a Ryobi, which really is kind of a cheap brand, so I wouldn't go with that. But this one's a little better when it comes to Ryobi. Anyhow, if it's plugged in, you don't have to worry about the brand, and this one will serve you well. A little easier to handle than this one right here. Now really, the skill saw or the straight cutting saw, the circular saw that I use the most is this little battery powered skill saw or circular saw. I use this thing probably 80% of the time because it's so easy to handle. I literally think that you could build a whole set of cabinets with this little saw right here, the battery powered skill saw, 18 volts. Again, the brand that you choose is kind of important. To finalize, when you're picking your skill saw, and again, or your circular saw, and this is probably the most difficult choice, the worm drive skill saw, the big one, is what you're going to need to buy if you know you're going to be cutting a lot of 2x4s or 4x4s, big timbers. Next one up is the cabinet maker styles circular saw, and a little bigger, got more power. It's corded, so you'll be able to cut up big sheets of plywood and stuff with that, and it'll work well. If you know you're going to do lightweight stuff, you could get by with just this saw. But if this is the only skill saw you have, probably not your first choice. The next thing that you're going to need when you get into woodworking is something to cut curved lines with. The skill saw is going to cut a straight line for you, but the jigsaw or the scroll saw sometimes it's called, or the bayonet saw it's called sometimes. Most people call it a jigsaw, is what's going to do that, is going to perform that function for you. This is one of the very first tools that I ever bought. And I suggest that you don't get a battery powered one. They do make a battery powered one, but I don't think it's a good idea. I would go with the corded version because you're gonna wear this puppy out. You're gonna use it a lot. I'm a big fan of Makita stuff, so I got a Makita now, but I used to have a Craftsman that was really good. I used it for many, many years. It just finally bit the bullet. I just wore it out. But anyhow, the Makita's got a lot of nice features on it. It has an adjustment for fine cutting and for rough cutting. And so it sort of oscillates in one position, and in the other position it just goes up and down. But I really like this Makita. You can adjust the base if you want to, but you're gonna need a jigsaw. All right, now the last thing that you gotta have is you have to have some screw guns for fastening things with. And most of the time these things you can buy in sets. It usually comes with a regular drill like this and an impact driver that looks like this. They call it an impact driver, but it really doesn't get the big impact. It's really more like a tap, but it really does help when you're driving screws. So last thing is you need a set of drills. Now, the big question is, what brand are you gonna go with? You gotta make a choice, and once you make that choice, you pretty much gotta stick with it so that all your stuff is compatible. I think that these three brands right here are pretty much some of the best. The DeWalt is the one that Home Depot sells a lot of, but to me it's a little bit heavy, so I didn't go with the DeWalt, but it does work well. The batteries come on and off real nice, and these things, they last real well. I would call them like the Chevrolet of hand tools. And the Milwaukee, I think, is a good brand as well. This battery, I noticed all of them seem to be a little harder to unplug or to pull out than the others, but they got these little buttons on the side instead of on the top, which makes it a little slower, at least for me, maybe just because I'm not used to it. But anyhow, the Milwaukee's a good brand, and it's always been a good brand. It was one of the first drills that I ever had, and so that's a good choice too. I'd call it the Ford of choices. And the last brand that I think is a really good choice is the Makita. I buy a lot of Makita stuff. It's the one I chose. It's the one I go with. I call this like the Toyota of hand tools. Super reliable. They do eventually wear out. I've gone through some of these, but they do really well. I want to show you some of the things about these tools that make them really important for you to have. So I chose the Makita because I like that the best. Now, you do have a choice of voltages when you buy the Makita. If you buy the Makita, and I'm not sure about the other brands, but I know this one has a couple of different voltage levels. It has a 12 volt and it has an 18 volt, and it may even have a bigger one now, I'm not sure, but I went with the 18 volt. That was important to me because it was compatible with my saw. And I bought these three things in a kit, and that's usually the way they come. So if you can afford it, I'd buy the kit. It's usually a good idea. I usually like to buy things as I need them, not as I think I might need them. So I went with the Makita now, and I went with the 18 volt, and I think the 18 volt is what you can go with. Also, there's different amperages on the batteries. This one comes in a 1.5 amp, a 3 amp, and a 5 amp, but the 5 amp is not compatible with everything, so I don't use it. Some of I think they kind of go overboard on the battery powered stuff. The corded stuff works way better for some things, so You don't want to go crazy when you're buying battery powered stuff. Keep it to the drills and maybe the scroll, the circular saw. And also I have a battery powered Sawzall, which I use a lot. Now, the drill, a couple things that I like about this Makita drill. Number one, this little light right here is awesome. You're back in a little corner and you can't see what you're doing. Light comes on and it really helps you out. It has a clutch on it, or a slip setting, so I can put it all the way down to its lowest setting, and then it'll slip real easily, or I can turn it all the way up to its highest setting and it doesn't slip at all. So, and it has a low gear, so like a granny gear, and a high gear for less torque but more speed. The impact driver, like I said, is really not a huge impact. It's not like a hammer drill. It's more like a little tap. But these things work really well for putting in screws and such. You don't want to be putting all those screws in by hand. I used to do that back in the old days, but that's crazy. So get yourself a set of these. All right, so I think with these basic tools, something to cut straight with, something to cut some curved lines with, and something to put it together with, you're well on your way to making some pretty cool stuff. Now, I want to leave you today with this proverb from my dad's old King James Bible that says, "Thou shalt not steal." So that means you're supposed to work hard, save your money, and go out and buy some tools. Once you do, probably a good idea to lock up your truck too, because people do stuff like that. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.